The vanilla-scented candles were still dancing on my birthday cake when my husband David brought his other family through our front door. I remember watching the wax drip slowly down the numbers, 5 and 0. Little did I know my own life was about to melt away in the same manner. The room was filled with the warm, golden light of happiness. My daughter Maya laughing as she arranged fresh flowers. My son Rohan teasing her about her new boyfriend. The rich aroma of my sister Anya's special biryani filling the air. Then the doorbell rang, and everything changed forever. David had been acting strange all week, jumpy, distracted, his mind somewhere far away from our life together. I saw him staring out the window multiple times that evening, his forehead creased with worry lines I'd never noticed before. When the doorbell chimed, he practically ran to answer it, his movements quick and nervous. I thought he had planned a special surprise for my 50th birthday, perhaps my childhood friend flying in from another state, or a musical performance like he'd arranged for our 20th anniversary. But nothing could have prepared me for what stood on our doorstep. There she was, a young woman in her late 20s with David's eyes, holding the hand of a little boy who couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Behind them stood a young man looking equally uncomfortable. For a moment, nobody spoke. The cheerful birthday music continued playing in the background, a cruel contrast to the scene unfolding in our doorway. Then David cleared his throat, his voice trembling as he spoke the words that would shatter my world. "Sarah, everyone, this is Alicia." He swallowed hard, unable to meet my eyes. "My daughter." Time stopped. The word daughter hung in the air between us. Sharp and impossible, Maya's vase of flowers slipped from her hands, shattering on the hardwood floor. Water and petals spread across the wood like our broken dreams. Rohan stood up so fast his chair fell backward with a deafening crash. "What did you just say?" he demanded, his voice cracking with disbelief. David continued, his gaze fixed on the floor. "This is her husband, Rohan." My son made a choked sound at hearing his name given to this stranger, and this, David's voice broke completely as he looked at the little boy, "is my grandson, Aryan." The air left my lungs. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, couldn't process what was happening. My hands gripped the back of a dining chair so tightly my knuckles turned white. This couldn't be real. This had to be some terrible nightmare. But the proof stood right there in our doorway, a living, breathing testament to my husband's betrayal. The math hit me like a physical blow. If this woman was 28, then David had gotten someone else pregnant 2 years before we even met. 2 years before he proposed to me on that beautiful beach at sunset. 2 years before we built this life, this home, this family that I thought was everything. Every anniversary celebration, every family vacation, every quiet moment of intimacy, all of it now tainted by this enormous, life-altering secret. The little boy, Aryan, started crying, frightened by the tension and the broken glass. He hid behind his mother's legs, peeking out at our beautiful home with wide, scared eyes. Alicia picked him up, holding him close in a protective gesture that spoke of maternal instinct. "I'm sorry," she whispered, not meeting anyone's eyes. "We didn't want to come like this." David finally looked at me, his eyes filled with tears that suddenly seemed theatrical. "Sarah, please," he begged. "Let me explain." But what explanation could possibly justify 30 years of deception? What words could mend the fracture that had just split our family in two? My mind raced through decades of memories, re-examining every business trip, every late night at work, every secret phone call. The emergency meetings that always seemed to happen on important family occasions. The client dinners that ran too late. The separate bank account he said was for business investments. How many birthdays had he missed with us because he was celebrating with them? How many Christmases had he divided between his two families? Maya came to stand beside me, her hand finding mine. Her grip was firm, anchoring me to this nightmare reality. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Just breathe." But breathing felt impossible when the man I'd built my life with had just revealed himself to be a stranger. Alicia spoke again, her voice stronger now. "My mother passed away 6 months ago. The medical bills." She trailed off, looking at David with a mixture of anger and desperation. "Dad was helping us, but after Mom died, everything fell apart. We lost our apartment last week." Each word was another knife twist. Not just a daughter, a wife, a complete other family. A parallel life running alongside ours, hidden in the shadows of our marriage. David hadn't just hidden a child. He'd hidden an entire marriage, complete with hospital visits and grief and struggles I knew nothing about. I looked at David, really looked at him, and saw the truth in the new lines on his face, the gray hairs I thought came from work stress, the distracted air I'd attributed to midlife crisis. These weren't signs of aging. They were the marks of a man living a double life, constantly calculating, constantly hiding, constantly lying to everyone he claimed to love. The vanilla cake sat between us like an unspoken accusation, the candles long extinguished, the frosting beginning to crack. This was supposed to be my celebration, my milestone, the beginning of our golden years together. Instead, it became the day I discovered that my entire marriage was built on a foundation of sand. If you're listening to this right now, if your heart is breaking alongside mine, if you're feeling that tightness in your chest that comes from witnessing pure betrayal, then please, I need you to stay with me. Listen to my story until the very end. Because what happened after that night, the tears, the anger, the shocking discoveries, the slow process of rebuilding a life from ashes, is something I can only share with someone who understands true pain. Your presence in this journey gives me the strength to keep going, to keep telling this story that still haunts my dreams. If this story touches you, if you've ever been betrayed or know someone who has, please share it with others who might need to hear it. Subscribe to this channel because every story told here comes from a real heart, a real pain, and leads to real healing that might help someone else find their way through the darkness. David took a step toward me, his hand outstretched in that familiar gesture that usually brought me comfort. "Sarah, please," he repeated, his voice raw with emotion. "Let me explain everything. There's so much you don't understand." But I stepped back, away from his touch, away from the man I thought I knew. The distance between us in that moment felt wider than all the years we'd spent together. All the secrets, all the lies, all the betrayals. They formed an impassable chasm I couldn't cross. Not even for the sake of 28 years of marriage, Rohan moved between us, his body tense with protective anger. "You had another family this whole time?" he demanded, his voice shaking with rage. "All those father-son camping trips, all those lectures about honesty and integrity, and you were living this massive lie?" The little boy cried harder. Confused and frightened by the raised voices, Alicia rocked him gently, her eyes flashing with something that looked like anger as she looked at Rohan. "He's just a little boy," she said, her voice sharp. "He doesn't understand what's happening. He's scared and tired, and he hasn't slept in a real bed in days." Her words hung in the air, another accusation, another layer of this complicated, painful situation. They were homeless. They were desperate. They had come here because they had nowhere else to go, because David had failed them too, in different ways but with the same fundamental dishonesty that had characterized our entire marriage. I looked around the room, at the birthday decorations my friends had helped me hang just that morning, at the family photos showing our happiest moments through the years, at the life we had built piece by piece, memory by precious memory. And in that moment, surrounded by the ruins of everything I held dear, I knew one thing for certain. My 50th birthday would be remembered not as a celebration of life and love, but as the day I discovered that the man I loved had been sharing his heart, his life, and our resources with another family for 30 years. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound I'd ever heard. It was the silence of dreams dying, of trust evaporating, of a family collapsing under the weight of a truth too terrible to bear. My sister Anya stood frozen near the dining table, her hands still holding the tray of biryani she'd been about to serve. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with shock and sympathy for me. David finally found his voice again, though it was barely a whisper. I met Alicia's mother, Sunita, during my internship in Mumbai, he began, his words stumbling over each other. It was before I met you, Sarah. We were young. It was a mistake. A mistake? Alicia's voice cut through the room like a knife. Is that what I am? A mistake? You visited us 4 times a year like we were some business obligation. You paid for my school fees but never came to parent-teacher meetings. You bought me birthday presents but never stayed to watch me blow out the candles. Each accusation was another revelation, another layer of the complex web of lies David had woven around all of us. I realized with dawning horror that while I thought David was being a devoted father to our children, he was actually dividing his attention, his love, his presence between 2 families. The times he'd missed Maya's dance recitals because of work emergencies, had he been attending Alicia's events instead? The weekends he'd been away on business trips, had he been playing father to his other daughter? Rohan stepped closer to David, his face a mask of disgust. How could you? He spat out. All those times you lectured me about responsibility, about being a good man, about treating women with respect, and you were doing this? You were living this double life? David's shoulders slumped in defeat. I never meant to hurt any of you, he said, his voice breaking. I was trying to protect everyone. Protect us? Maya's voice was cold, sharper than I'd ever heard it. You didn't protect us, Dad. You lied to us. You made us live in a fantasy while you dealt with the reality. You let us love you while you were keeping this enormous part of your life hidden from us. I watched my children confront their father, and my heart broke all over again. They weren't just dealing with the shock of discovering a secret sister and nephew. They were dealing with the destruction of the image they had of their father. The man they had looked up to, respected, and loved their entire lives had just been revealed as a fraud. Arian's crying had subsided to quiet whimpers, but he still clung to his mother, his small body trembling with fear and exhaustion. Looking at him, I felt a strange mixture of anger and pity. This child was innocent in all of this. He hadn't asked to be born into this complicated, messy situation. He was just a little boy who wanted stability and love, just like my own children had wanted when they were his age. Where are they going to stay? Anya asked quietly, finally setting down the tray she'd been holding. The practical question hung in the air, pulling us all back from the emotional brink to the immediate reality we faced. David looked at me, his eyes pleading. Sarah, they have nowhere else to go, just for a few nights until I can find them a place. No, the word came out of my mouth before I could stop it. They are not staying in our home. Mom, Maya said softly. They're homeless. A child is involved. I don't care, I snapped, the anger I'd been suppressing finally bubbling to the surface. I will not have the living proof of your father's betrayal sleeping under our roof. I will not look at them every morning and be reminded that my marriage is a lie. Alicia flinched at my words, but she didn't look away. We don't want your charity, she said, her voice trembling but proud. We just need a little help to get back on our feet. Help, I laughed, the sound bitter and foreign in my ears. Your father has been helping you for 30 years with money that should have been for our family, with time that should have been for our children, with love that should have been only for us. The room fell silent again as the full weight of my words settled over everyone. This wasn't just about the shock of discovery, it was about the theft of resources, of time, of emotional energy that should have been dedicated to our family alone. Every dollar David had given them was a dollar taken from our children's college fund. Every hour he'd spent with them was an hour stolen from our family. Every bit of emotional energy he'd invested in them was energy diverted from our marriage. I looked at David, and for the first time, I saw not just a man who had lied, but a man who had stolen from his own family to build another. The realization was so painful, I had to lean against the wall for support. Get out, I whispered, my voice shaking with the effort to control my emotions. All of you, get out of my house. David stared at me, his face pale with shock. Sarah, please. I said get out. I screamed, the sound tearing from my throat. "Take your secret family and get out of my house, out of my life. I never want to see any of you again." In that moment, surrounded by the ruins of my birthday celebration, watching my husband and his other family standing in the home we had built together, I felt something inside me break into a million pieces. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that my life would never be the same again. The days that followed my birthday were the darkest of my life. David took Alicia and her family to a cheap motel that first night, but the damage was already carved deep into my soul. Our beautiful home, once filled with the warm echoes of family laughter and love, now stood silent and hollow, every room whispering reminders of the betrayal that had shattered our lives. I couldn't bring myself to sleep in our marital bedroom. The king-sized bed we had shared for 28 years now felt like a foreign country. The memories we had created there now tainted beyond recognition. Instead, I moved to the guest room, where the sterile white sheets and unfamiliar flower-patterned walls mirrored the cold emptiness growing inside me. Maya stayed with me those first few torturous nights, her loving presence a small, flickering candle in the overwhelming darkness that threatened to consume me. She'd make me chamomile tea exactly how I liked it, with a teaspoon of honey and a slice of lemon, holding my hand when the tears wouldn't stop, listening patiently when I needed to pour out my confusion and pain. But even her steadfast love couldn't fill the massive void David's deception had carved in my heart. Every corner of our home, the kitchen where we'd cooked family meals together, the living room where we'd celebrated countless holidays, the garden where we'd planted roses on our 10th anniversary, all of it now felt like a beautifully decorated stage where I had been performing in a play without knowing the script was fiction. 3 days after the birthday party that destroyed my world, David returned alone. I found him standing on our porch in the pouring rain, looking like a drowned, desperate animal seeking shelter from a storm he himself had created. "Sarah," he said through the glass door, his voice barely audible over the drumming rain. "Please, just let me explain. I know I don't deserve it, but please." I opened the door, not out of forgiveness or compassion, but out of sheer emotional exhaustion. The white-hot anger had burned itself out, leaving only cold ashes of profound sadness behind. He stood dripping in the doorway, his expensive suit clinging pathetically to his frame, his face pale and drawn like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. We sat in the living room, the same room where our lives had shattered just days before. The cheerful birthday decorations were gone, packed away by a tearful Maya, but the ghost of that night hung heavy in the air, clinging to the furniture, the walls, the very atmosphere we breathed. "I met Sunita during my engineering internship in Mumbai," David began, his eyes fixed on his trembling hands as if they held the script of his confession. "She was beautiful, kind, and worked at the cafe near my hostel. I was 22, lonely, and stupid. It was only supposed to be a summer romance, something to pass the time before I returned to America, but she got pregnant." He told me everything then. The rushed, secret marriage in a small temple to give Alicia his name. The overwhelming guilt that had eaten at him like cancer for 30 years. The monthly payments he'd been making since before we even met. How he'd visit them 4 times a year like clockwork, pretending they were important business trips. How he'd maintained 2 separate lives in 2 different countries, constantly juggling schedules and stories, constantly lying to everyone he claimed to love, living in perpetual fear of discovery. The medical bills from Sunita's cancer treatment completely wiped them out, he said, his voice breaking like shattered glass. "I've been using our joint savings, even dipping into the children's college fund to help them, but it wasn't enough. They lost their apartment last month, and they had nowhere else to go. That's why I brought them here on your birthday. It was the worst possible timing, but they were literally sleeping in their car, Sarah. Arian has asthma, and the cold nights were making him sick." I listened in heavy silence, watching the man I had loved for nearly 3 decades completely unravel before me. There were no more tears left in me. I had cried myself dry. All that remained was a deep, profound sadness for all of us caught in this web of deception. For me, for our children, for Alicia, who grew up with a part-time father, for that innocent little boy caught in the middle, and even for David himself, trapped in the prison of his own making. "What happens now, David?" I asked quietly, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm raging inside me. "What happens to us? To our family? To the life we built together?" David looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. "I don't know," he whispered, the words filled with genuine despair. "I've messed everything up so badly, created such a complicated mess that I don't know how to fix any of it. I just know I can't lose you. Sarah, I can't lose our family." In the weeks that followed, we began the slow, painful process of untangling our intertwined lives. David moved into the small apartment he'd rented for Alicia and her family, while I stayed in our family home, now too large and echoey with just me in it. We started intensive marriage counseling, sitting in stiff, hostile silence in the therapist's beige office, learning to communicate through the wreckage of our relationship, picking through the debris of broken trust word by painful word. The most surprising and beautiful development came from Maya and Rohan. Despite their initial white-hot anger at David, they began cautiously reaching out to Alicia. Maya told me about their first awkward coffee meeting, how they'd sat in uncomfortable silence for the first 15 minutes until they discovered they both loved the same obscure Russian novels, shared the same self-deprecating sense of humor, even had the same habit of tapping their fingers when they were nervous. "She's my sister, Mom," Maya said one evening, her voice soft with wonder and confusion. "However messed up and wrong this situation is, she's my actual sister. We have the same father. We share DNA. That has to mean something." Rohan was much harder to win over, his masculine pride and sense of betrayal running deep, but little Aryan worked his innocent magic on everyone. The first time Rohan reluctantly met his nephew at a park, he came home hours later with suspiciously bright eyes. "He has Dad's exact smile, Mom," he told me, his voice thick with emotion. The same crooked grin, the same way his eyes crinkle at the corners. "It's like looking at a little version of the dad we used to know and admire before all this." Slowly, tentatively, miraculously, our family began to reshape itself into something new, unexpected, and strangely beautiful. It wasn't the perfect, shiny family I had dreamed of and believed we were, but it was real in ways our carefully maintained facade had never been. There were no more secrets, no more hidden corners, no more pretending. We were flawed, broken, patched together, but authentic. 6 months after my birthday, we all gathered for Aryan's 6th birthday party. It was held in David's modest apartment, with colorful streamers hanging from the popcorn ceiling and a slightly lopsided chocolate cake on the folding table. The atmosphere was still somewhat strained, conversations occasionally halting, laughter sometimes too bright, but there was genuine warmth there too. Growing slowly, like a plant, pushing through cracked concrete, I watched Maya showing Alicia how to properly frost cupcakes, their dark heads bent close together, their similar profiles striking. I saw Rohan playing superheroes with Aryan, lifting the giggling boy onto his shoulders while spinning dramatic stories of adventure. And I saw David watching it all with tears streaming openly down his face, seeing his two families finally coming together in one room, even if it was under circumstances born of deception and pain. That night, as I helped clean up spilled juice and cake crumbs after the party, Alicia approached me hesitantly, wringing a dishcloth in her hands. "Thank you for coming today," she said softly, not meeting my eyes directly. "I know this can't be easy for you, being here with us." I looked at this young woman, my husband's daughter, a living reminder of his ultimate betrayal, and realized with sudden clarity that I no longer felt the sharp stab of anger toward her. She was just another victim of David's web of lies, another person trying to make the best of a terrible situation not of her making, trying to build a good life for her son despite the complicated hand she'd been dealt. "You're welcome, Alicia," I said, and for the first time, I genuinely meant it. Arian is a wonderful boy. You're doing a good job with him. The healing didn't happen overnight. There were still difficult days that hit me like unexpected punches to the gut, moments of fresh anger and pain that would surface when I least expected them. Finding an old love note from David tucked in a book, hearing our song on the radio, seeing a couple our age walking hand in hand in the park. All these small things could trigger waves of grief for the marriage I thought I had. David and I continued our counseling, slowly rebuilding trust, brick by painful brick, learning to communicate with raw honesty instead of comfortable lies. We made the difficult decision to sell our beautiful family home. There were too many ghosts there, too many memories now tainted by deception. We bought 2 smaller, modest homes, one for me in a quiet neighborhood I'd always loved, and one for David closer to Alicia's family, so he could be the proper grandfather to Arian that he'd never been to his own children. We learned to co-parent our adult children and navigate our new, complicated, extended family dynamics with grace and mutual respect. 2 years after that fateful birthday, I can finally look back and see the valuable lessons hidden in the pain. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about excusing wrong actions or pretending the hurt never happened, but about freeing yourself from the poisonous burden of carrying anger like a weight on your soul. I've learned that family isn't defined solely by blood or traditional structures, but by the genuine love, acceptance, and support we offer each other in our imperfect humanity. And I've learned, most surprisingly, that even the deepest, most painful betrayals can sometimes lead to unexpected blessings and growth we never could have imagined. David and I are no longer married in the traditional sense. The trust between us, once broken so completely, couldn't be fully restored to what it was. But we've found a new, deeper way to be family to each other. We share holidays and birthdays with genuine joy. We support our children together through life's challenges. We've even learned to laugh together again. Real laughter, not the performative kind from before. The love between us didn't disappear. It transformed, evolved into something more honest, more real, stripped of illusions and pretenses. Arian calls me Nani Sarah now, and hearing that title no longer brings a pang of pain, but a surge of genuine affection and joy. He runs to me with crayon drawings from kindergarten, proudly showing me his artistic creations, and I have a special drawer in my kitchen dedicated solely to his art supplies and favorite snacks. Maya and Alicia have become genuinely close friends, planning family gatherings together and supporting each other through life's challenges like the sisters they are. Rohan has fully embraced his role as favorite uncle, teaching Arian to play soccer in the park and taking him on weekend adventures, giving him the consistent male presence every boy needs. The perfect life I thought I had was indeed a beautiful, carefully constructed lie. But what emerged from its ashes is something more valuable and enduring, a life built on truth, however painful that truth initially was. A life where we no longer have to hide parts of ourselves, where we can love each other honestly and completely, flaws and all. A life where our family, though different from what I'd envisioned, is larger, more diverse, and more resilient than before. If you're still listening to my story, if you've stayed with me through this long, difficult journey of heartbreak and healing, I want to thank you from the very depths of my soul. Your virtual presence, your listening ear, has been an unexpected source of comfort and strength during my darkest days. Your attention has made me feel less alone in my pain, has reminded me that we're all connected in our human experiences of love and loss, betrayal and forgiveness. And if you're going through your own struggle right now, if your heart is breaking from betrayal or disappointment, if your life has taken an unexpected turn that has left you reeling and lost, I want you to know this with absolute certainty. The pain will not last forever. The darkness will eventually give way to light. The broken pieces of your life can be rearranged into something beautiful and meaningful, even if it looks completely different from what you originally planned or dreamed. Have faith in your own strength. It's greater than you know. Trust in your innate capacity to heal and grow from adversity. Believe that even from the deepest pain, new life, new understanding, and new blessings can emerge. And remember, you are never truly alone in your journey. There are always people who care, who will listen, who will help you find your way back to the light when you can't see it yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for sharing my pain and my healing. Thank you for reminding me through your presence that our stories matter, that our pain has purpose, and that our healing can inspire others facing their own battles. May you find the courage to face your own challenges with an open heart. May you discover the strength to rebuild what's broken into something even more beautiful. May you develop the wisdom to recognize and appreciate the unexpected